The Titanic, the most magnificent and modern ship of the time when it was first launched. But on the first sailing, the ship crashed, killing about 1,500 people. There was a time when Titanic was a name that caused curiosity and obsession with many people, especially seafarers. Why? Because there are many rumors about the ghost ship and the ghost stories surrounding it. After the famous film was released and as well as documentaries that scientists and explorers announced, the public today believed in the love story in the film. And human psychology is that when they have heard too much about it, and seen many pictures, or documentaries, they forget the fear and even poeticize it. Many rumors and ghost stories about this ship in the early years of the 20th century were forgotten and no longer mentioned it. What do you think? A ship so luxurious, modern that the passengers never thought they would die. The ship crashed and chaos ensued. Many people were trapped in the last compartments. People competed for lifeboats. Then a lot of lucky people were still alive and drifting in the sea in the hope of being picked up by some boat, but no boat could save them. Only 333 bodies were found and interred. The rest are. The ghost story below probably has nothing to do with Titanic. Maybe it's just a coincidence, or in the world of Newfoundland fishermen in Canada they tell each other jokes while talking passionately. There is a small fishing boat that runs fishing in Newfoundland. Their ships mainly catch the very valuable black cod in the market. In Newfoundland, it is mainly fishing. There are many types of fishing boats. They catch all kinds of fish, all kinds of aquatic crabs and sell them everywhere. But this time a lot of fishing boats, especially those fishing from Europe and taking away the fishery resources of local ships. Partly because it was still a British colony at this time. Not to mention the large fishing boats that appear, of businessmen who know how to do business. They realize that investing in fishing in this area will bring great returns in the future. The big ships caught fish until the whole processing place was full. While a few small boats of fishermen, the source of fish is gradually scarce. Due to the competition to catch fish from other vessels, this small trawler is always in trouble. The owner of the boat is quite crazy, but the fishing work becomes more and more difficult day by day. Many trips do not yield much. The owner of this ship is very bossy and hot-tempered, so no one follows his boat to work. He is an Irishman who settled here about 10 years ago and is somewhat rude. He was in the pub drinking and listening to the fisherman and the boat owner saying something. "Hey, next week is the day the Titanic crashed. Bad luck. That ship was going from England to New York, but it crashed off our waters. Remember to stay out of the sea." Of course. Who set sail on that day? It's been 12 years. I was a fisherman then. Passengers' bodies washed ashore. Whist. Don't talk about that. Or else people will talk about it. Rumor has it that many people are still missing. And still drifting on the sea waiting for the ship to come to rescue. But how long ago? Were they dead? This kid is stupid. Of course. It's a ghost story. The owner of the ship overheard the people in the tavern talking and thought that these boat owners and fishermen wouldn't go out for the week. Then maybe your ship will have a big batch if it goes to sea next week. So he took the opportunity right away. He was Irish, Northern European and completely isolated, even the maritime news he rarely paid attention to. So did the Titanic crash. Besides, when the train crashed, he hadn't lived in this area yet, so he didn't know anything. He only noticed this news because when he came here, some people kept telling him to go treasure hunting. He was interested in the news that the ship was full of high-class passengers, and the wealth they brought on board, jewelry, money, even antiques such as paintings and sculptures was a fortune. Rumor has it that some children in the area picked up some items that were washed ashore at that time. Even the things that were worthless, many people hunted to auction to buy the relics of the victims on the ship. Those who are short of money are trying to find each other. He also took a boat to the place to see if he could get anything, but in vain. It wasn't easy, especially after all these years, so he forgot about it. His fishing boat set sail, with only 4 people on board. There were no local fishermen with them. His boat is small, his temperament is not good, his salary is low, so no fisherman wants to go with the boat. There are a lot of people working in fishing in the area with no ships. They usually stay at the port to wait for a boat to call, then they go with them and get paid. Of course he had a few acquaintances, but everyone refused. They were even surprised that he dared to go at this time. He had to find some Asian immigrants to go with him. These people know nothing. The sea is calm but the fog is light. It's cloudy, but it doesn't look like there's going to be a storm. He planned to only go a short distance near the shore and then return after harvesting, so he did not pay attention to the weather. Looks like they got a decent catch. The net cages are heavy, the pulley swings endlessly. He was very happy, thinking that less than a day will be full of boats and be able to return. When the three workers pulled the rope up, there were only a few fish. But there's a lot of moss and we don't know what it is. They were tired of picking the fish out and throwing them on the deck of the boat. The fishes struggled. Then they put the moss and things like marine trash back down. The master of the ship went to check if the net was not torn. There was something like a block of wood of unknown shape covered with oysters stuck to the ship. He was surprised to see what looked like a gilded clock stuck in the net. He quickly wiped off the moss and saw that it was clearly a gold-plated watch. He rushed to the pile of trash they were throwing down to have a look. He yelled at the three and made them bring those things to the deck. All he saw were valuables. Come on, a bronze statue, a phonograph, a gilded picture frame. He's so happy. At this moment, there is one person. He didn't know English and just gestured. He patted him on the back to point away. He couldn't see anything, but behind the pieces of ice on the sea surface, he saw that there were 3 or 4 figures floating in the sea. Another guy shouted something very scared. He hurriedly grabbed what they had picked up and wanted to throw it into the sea. He of course stopped and punched him. He scrambled to his feet and said something in Chinese. The other two were scared like never before. They said something but he did not understand. He ignored them and hugged tightly, keeping the things he had just picked up. He looked at the silhouettes of people in the sea but did not see them. He also used binoculars to look but couldn't find it. But through binoculars he saw a suitcase floating in the sea. He remembers a glimpse of a man holding a suitcase and floating near the iceberg. After thinking for a while, he took a deep breath and urged the others to set sail. He turned the steering wheel in the direction of the suitcase. In his mind, he thought of the ghost stories of the passengers at sea in that accident. But now he could only think of that suitcase, which must be full of the rumored money and jewels. Accidents and people must be rushing to bring the most valuable things with them. The kind of leather suitcase that is waterproof and buoyant like that can only be bought by the upper class. So in there must be the dishes of the upper class. The 3 people on the boat thought he had let the anchor lift and immediately ran the boat to shore, so they hurriedly followed suit. But when they realized the train was going very fast in that direction, they shouted, wanting to stop him. He yelled and threw things at them. When the train neared that direction, all 3 panicked and they jumped off the train right away. They just watched the boat for a moment, then shouted loudly and swam to shore. That was also the last time anyone saw the ship and its owner. These immigrants don't speak English and they can't tell the whole story. It rains during the week and people cannot search. Fishing boats in the area often go out to sea, so they thought they would know the news soon, but they still couldn't find the boat and its owner. Those 3 people told the story, but few believed it. From the moment they pulled the net up, the boat seemed to falter. They stood on the side of the boat and saw it very clearly. Then they knew it was a ghost and were scared. The ghosts drift with their items. It's full of things haunted by its owners. At that moment they jumped into the sea and saw the boat sail away. They saw it continue to drive away from the shore. And they also found out why the boat then sank. When the boat went away from them, they saw a lot of arms clinging to the side of the boat and drenched black heads. There. They sometimes tell this not so famous story. During the ancient period BC, there was a time when the civilization of Turkey was comparable to the civilizations of Egypt, Rome, and Babylon. This civilization influenced other countries such as Mongolia and Syria. Due to its location in the 2 continents of Asia and Europe, plus the fact that in ancient times Turkey was a great power. Later, its civilization was only rarely mentioned and recorded in books or did not appear as much in popular culture as the Greek, Roman, or Egyptian civilizations. Is a matter of frustration of a scholar. He felt that this Turkish civilization, like himself, was not famous in academic circles. He is a researcher and teacher at a university, but look at his class. There are only about 10 students registered and they rarely come to class, and sit in class with bored and complaining attitude. Is that the history classes of other civilizations are full so they have to sign up for this class, and this Turkish civilization is not interesting? They want to learn and study the civilizations in the movies Confirmation, Marinated Egypt or Greek Titans. He didn't think it was good, especially in terms of academic competition. Now even universities or research institutions give such professors more respect. They even make a lot of money publishing discoveries or artifacts. Not to mention the more favorable press and media. Their books are all bestsellers. So he decided to go on a trip to do research and discovery. This time he focused on myths and legends to his liking. He argues that the reason Turkish civilization is not popular in current culture is because it lacks a systematic set of mythological books like other civilizations. For example, in Greek culture, everyone read the names of the Olympians and their private lives. As for Turkish mythology, well, he sighed because according to the collection, Turkey's divine system is as numerous as any other civilization, and it is also very diverse and rich because this is a land of cultural diversity. Culture and import many different cultures that only have god names and a few lines of description, no plot, no idea what they look like, no description. But they have the god of the sky, the god of water, the god of the sea, the god of thunder, etc. The researchers before him had traveled all over the place but did not collect anything. He cherished his going to investigate closely, and then publish the discovery in the form of a book about myths. This will be an academic shock. Many historians only make their name when they write about the myths. You were supposed to go to Harran Town. It is an old town that is not influenced by Greek culture or Islam or Western culture like some other parts of Turkey. But unfortunately that place is close to the border with Syria. The situation is complicated. It is said that the risk of Syrian rebels fighting on the border is very high. They even sent troops and hearses to prepare for a conflict. Soldiers evacuated in Harran and surrounding areas. So he had to evacuate quickly. They were put on vehicles and drove away in convoys. And evacuate in all directions. He sat in a crowded car, not knowing where the car was going. They stopped at a few rest stops and the soldiers on the road signaled and shouted for the cars to continue. The next morning, the car stopped at an unfamiliar village. But the houses are built in a new style. Wooden houses or brick and stone houses are mixed and most of the houses are abandoned. He knows that is the general situation. Due to urbanization and people moving to urban areas, there are thousands of towns in Turkey that are dying. Mostly just old people or retirees here. People who are used to evacuation quickly find temporary accommodation. The villagers are very hospitable and help the refugees with arrangements. The ladies brought in furniture and blankets and brought pots of hot soup. He found himself lost here. The refugees were all families, or people who had known each other for a long time. He thinks that he should find a place to live alone, not with other people, or living with other people's families is very inconvenient. He immediately asked a funny aunt who was making soup for everyone if there was a house for him to stay alone. When he passed through the mountains he saw many wooden houses. The aunt was surprised and then laughed loudly and said, "Oh my God, who lives alone in this area? Aren't you afraid of Aziz Khanum entering the house?" Many people and children laughed at him. He quickly grabbed it. The name was the name of a Turkish god, although not in the main branch, but one of the minor gods. And especially cannot be verified, because the territory of Turkey is large and it is not known from which region that name was transmitted. That name means nameless lady, which means nameless woman. Unlike other gods, although there is no story about them, there is more or less a good description of their strength and character, and some stories are circulated about where they rule and like a treasure. Hunting household or god who punishes those who pollute water, or midwife. And Aziz Khanum is a strange name, only knows of the evil god system and nothing else. And the name is weird, God has no name. He was overjoyed at this discovery. Academia has asked many questions about this god, and this is something no one has ever discovered. If he finds the legend about this god and has a description, origin and some artifacts, he can give into a museum or published. He was glad to have found the origin of the legend of this god. He immediately asked the women in the village. But they told each other not to talk, lest the guests be curious and encounter disaster like the previous times. An old man even warned him that Aziz Khanum still existed. She walked in the dark in the area. If she met her, she had to close her eyes and pretend to sleep. The professor decided to expedite the investigation. Very easily, he lured the children in the village, gave them chocolate bars, and they innocently said it all. Some quite old children said that their grandparents told them that Aziz Khanum was a pagan god who had migrated from another nation. People in the area were scared to arrest and kill these people because they worshipped other gods and did not worship Allah. Told them they had monstrous customs and that maybe the worshippers of demons and evil spirits would harm people. But from then on, something as weird as a woman kept appearing. Probably the ghost turned into a demon to take revenge and punish her. Fine, this is scarier than God. Just recently there was a person who went far away and didn't come back in time to disappear after dark. Then 2 tourists came and were curious so they went out, and then they disappeared. Everyone said it was because of Aziz Khanum. But everyone who met Aziz Khanum disappeared, so there were rumors that she was dragged into hell. The professor thinks this is a shocking discovery, a god whose roots are cruel and anti-racism and other beliefs in ancient times. Certainly, the ancient gods of Turkey were always built from tribal chiefs or regional leaders. He was not satisfied with this discovery. He had to learn more about the shape and outstanding features of this god. He said that like some festivals in other countries, sometimes people pretend to be ghosts, or gods to go around and let people in the area keep the rules and live standards, or to remind people should be kind and love each other. He looked around the village and saw a few people of Asian descent and a few Arabs or even Jews. So it's even more certain that it's just someone posing as a threat, or that's a tradition here. As for the stories of missing people, they are fabricated. Tourists go at some point, and missing people leave their wives and husbands and go away. So that night he quietly went out without telling anyone. No one noticed him, so it was easy. He went up to the separate wooden house, without any houses around. It is a house lacking in amenities. He regrets coming here. No electricity or water. The place is full of dust and cobwebs. But at night, the road was full of rough rocks, so he couldn't find another place, so he stayed there. He calculated that if he caught the impersonator of Aziz Khanum, he would shoot a video for documentation. He set up the camera to film the opening sequence, and he sat down and gave a presentation on his research first. Only test filming, he also edited the introduction and the topic. He didn't think he'd meet him right away, so he fell asleep while composing the research paper. He woke up because he heard the fall of the price to the camera. He overslept and still let the camera open with the lamp. The light fell to the ground and broke. At first he thought that there was a mouse, but he felt that something was in this house. He looked at the light that saw that a lamp that was definitely fell to the ground could not be broken like that. It was like being crushed by something. He opened the camera. Watching and using a flashlight all over the house, he saw that in the camera, since he was in his home and adjusted the camera, there was a shadow outside the window looking in. It must have followed him here. He was less afraid and thought that it was the person who pretended to be Aziz Khanum in the region. He hurriedly illuminated the house and said his goodwill hope. But he was mutual because he heard the bizarre sounds. It grew bigger and bigger. The thing he thought was the shadow growing bigger and bigger due to the weaker light, and the dim light went out. Then he felt like something was bulging and breathing. It moves hard. It is like a shadow and then collects other shadows to enlarge. That's how it moves. Now he understands how rumor is to pretend to sleep if he meets Aziz Khanum, sleeps, turns off the lights, has no light source, the shadow cannot throw it out. This demon is a shadow that follows people at night, and if you just open the lights and let it have time to swallow other shadows and throw close to you. He regretted finding out too late. It did not give him a chance to scream. It crashed on him. He saw everything after dark. He felt that many others were standing around him. He could not move as well as them. He thought what to try to escape and explain all this. That was his last thought until his mind also fell into the shadow. A couple has just found an apartment in a mini apartment. They have to move away because the husband lost his job in 2 hours of economic difficulties. Unable to find an contrang apartment, they had to move to an old apartment, very poor quality. But that is also more fortunate than many people who lose their jobs to go home to live or live in the shabby houses. They felt lucky to find an apartment to live in, could not come. Thought to stay and go see one or small single rooms. Fortunately, finding a spacious apartment with full facilities and affairs. In this day, it is almost impossible. This apartment has 2 rooms. They plan to find people for grafting will still reduce costs. A student or a couple, for example. So they sign the contract immediately and spend a deposit. Their acquaintances say it in and out is not a problem. But they feel problematic is lucky for themselves because of the price of rent. If not, how can they rent? They are not afraid of those problems. They and their husbands are looking to find work urgently and receive a great job to pay for the red life. The husband has to do night shift. As for the wife, to find a job half in the morning, people clean the goods in the market. Living there for 1 week and nothing. They also began to wonder with this mini apartment building no one lived outside the couple. Even the manager's room was left empty. The husband knew his wife was afraid of hinting, so she advised her not to think much anymore. Anyway, just moving, or walking around to see how. Because they folded and sucked at work, they never walked around or looking for people to live. But there are a few neighbors in the market and talked with his wife. The wife of course asked right away why my house has just leased so cheap, and the house is good, but no one is to rent or what is there. The neighbors laughed, they said nothing. So the wife was very assured and asked why the price was so cheap. A lady left and said, "Nothing, sister. The house she rented without ghosts. But, in the park right behind my house there is a ghost. The wife is out of soul." But the neighbors said nothing. The wife thinks back to the back of the house like a vacant lot. Now full grass. Not only the park, the vacant lot. It again not 92M hidden in the back. seeing them fence and steel and concrete husbands. The neighbors told each other before they calculated to build a parking lot there. Before that, it was the park for children to play. In the past, the land was spacious, the park was actually very large. Later, planning and building houses for demand. The houses grow around. Then the need is to have more parking in the area. But not yet built, there is an accident. Then left there, the people were used to the park. So, what is it? How is Ghost? Please tell me. The wife kept asking. Due to that accident. She saw them leaving some iron trees there. When the kids used to play the park. She knows the seesaw that children often play. Well, the children they don't know. Around 5 or 6 years old do not know anything. When preparing to start building the 3-story parking lot, they removed the swing and seesaw. But at that time, it was not yet started, so it was not prevented by the net. Is it empty? Why was a girl running in? She thought like it was every day to play. So he sat on a unsteady wooden bar. Many trees have one tree to pass along. Then it sat up. He also ran out to call the kids playing football to play with him, because the seesaw must have even. There were 2 children running in, but one cried and ran away. The people in the area rushed to ask why he cried, because he kept running on the road crying all the time. He pointed to the ground to see a child broken his arms and legs and broken his arms and waved them to call them to go out. They ran to see the other 2 children died of the wooden and the girl died a day earlier. Is it menstruation? So there is a ghost. I know. The type of apartment in her house is 2 rooms. Usually households will move in. Many families want to move to ask the neighbors. We had to tell them really. They heard the story so scared. All families have children. Listening to the story of ghosts inviting children into it to play and then die, who dares? Her family only has 2 husband and wife. Only children can see ghosts. The wife heard that fear. Some neighbors saw that the wife was so scared, then advised to tell them here for a long time and went through that land but did not see anything, just rest assured. The wife cannot be assured. She went home and passed by the land when she rushed back. Fortunately, the living room window does not turn towards the ground. But their bedroom windows turn there. The house has 2 bedrooms, but they discuss each other to make the room larger for some room tenants, so they will have more rent, and they sleep smaller bedrooms. Just moving in, so they could not clean much at all. They put their furniture sprawling and sleeping in the living room. The wife opened the window and saw it right at the ground. Despite being covered by the tree, she seemed to see something like the shadow of a seesaw. She hurriedly covered the window. When her husband woke up for lunch, she quickly told her husband immediately. The husband sighed because he knew the nature or fear of his wife, so she reassured her to be the wooden trees there to look like real seesaw. He said that now this house has a ghost, so do not say that the next land. Today they continue to clean up their belongings. At night, he went to work as usual. Yet, the wife at home alone is not quiet. She covered the window with a curtain. They finished cleaning the room, so she went to sleep. Bag. In the middle of the night, she woke up because there was something outside the door. She panicked up because that sound was repeated like a seesaw. Someone is playing seesaw from the land. She ran out completely outside the living room but still heard. She did not dare to go out because it was dark, so she bossed the blanket until her husband returned. She cried last night heard the seesaw. The husband thought that because she was too scared and hallucinated, she ignored it. After a hard work, he heard his wife demanding to move to him. In the morning, she went to the market to work and asked the neighbors all the time. They assert that they did not hear anything. There are many people who work at night and have a night car to sell at night right next to it, but no one has heard anything. If not, the area would rumor. An elderly old woman said that only children could hear and see. Her grandchildren did not know anything whenever they passed or said to hear the seesaw and the sound of children laughing there and demanding to play while she and her son the daughter-in-law does not hear anything. That night she still heard the seesaw. Everyone is ignored. Her husband was hot because they had a deposit and signed a rental contract for 2 years. She tried to endure. Sometimes when you open the TV, then put the cotton in the air and drink. After 1 month, her body could not stand it. She fainted at the market. They took her to the hospital. Her husband had to ask the doctor to prescribe strong sedatives for her because she often imagined everything. The doctor said, "No way. I want to congratulate you. Congratulations to both of you, your sister is pregnant." At that time, the 2 were surprised. They understood and went home and said nothing. They simply moved to the bedroom. The wife continued to hear the seesaw. Then the big pregnancy, she heard the sound of children laughing out in that empty land. They and their husbands will try to work. There was a time before their children were older, and at that time they were moving out of here. Their children will not be invited because they are too dangerous anyway. They also understand why no one dares to be in this cheap house, because they really out there on the seesaw are looking for enough even new numbers to divide evenly for the two heads. New 3 of them cannot play.